Welcome everyone to today's session of the International Cartographic Association Geospatial Semantics and Ontology Commission. We're very, very fortunate today to have Karl Grossner joining us. And I think a lot of us are looking forward to this talk. I just want to give the briefest of introductions about the commission and just say something about a future event that people might be interested in joining too. The commission is working on geospatial semantic and ontology issues related to cartography. This is brought to be understood quite broadly, and we're trying with the speaker series to have a broad range of topics that we'll discuss. I think some of you were here for the first talk and that we had in this series, and we're looking forward to more talks. Today, of course, Karl Grossner's presentation will start. The format is relatively simple. We have about 30 to 40 minutes for the presentation, and then the remainder of the hour we have for any discussion that people have. Should you have any questions, please put them in the chat during the presentation, and we can come back to them during the question and answer session afterwards. Just a brief note about the next talk. It'll be a few months from now, but and I don't yet have a title, but I do know that Professor Rob Roth from the University of Wisconsin-Madison will be joining us on the 29th of October to talk about semantics and map design issues. So if you want to add that to your calendar, please do. Otherwise, please remember that we have a website for the commission where you can find out more information about upcoming talks. And of course, also this presentation is being recorded. Thank you for agreeing to that. And we'll also have the slides available for future reference. So Karl Grossner, I think many of us know, but for those of us who are looking forward to his talk on this important topic, has been technical director and lead developer of the World Historical Gazetteer project since its inception in 2017. He's a geographer and a digital humanities research developer who earned his PhD in geography at the University of California, Santa Barbara in 2010, where his research focused on ontologies for representing historical geographic knowledge and spatial thinking and learning. Afterwards, he spent 5 years at Stanford University Libraries, designing and building several interactive scholarly works in collaboration with historians, archaeologists, literary scholars, and fellow developers. Among these are Orbis, the Stanford geospatial model of the Roman world, Katelhovyuk, Living Archive, I hope I pronounced that more or less okay, and Authorial London. His research and publications have always focused on joining space and time in various ways. Karl has led development as well of several data models and formats, including linked places, GeoJSON-T, and linked traces. Today, we're looking forward to his thoughts and ideas on semantics in the World Historical Gazetteer. The abstract tantalizes with the mention of difficult cases and mixed results. I think most of us are going to be looking forward to the presentation and the discussion, for which we'll have ample time for questions. Again, please feel free to post any questions you have in the chat during the talk. Please tell us more, Karl, about the research and share your presentation with us if you can.
Sure. First, while you're still seeing my face, let me thank you all for being here, and I will now share the screen and hope that all goes well. There we go. Well, thank you, Francis, for asking me to do this talk. Francis asked me to do a talk, and I said, well, what would it be about? And he said, well, how about the semantics of World Historical Gazetteer? And I said, well, that sounds like the title for something. Let's just say that's what it is. And so semantics plays a significant role in the conception and the development of this platform. And I'm going to walk through some thoughts about that. From three perspectives or three angles. First, the project's mission includes terms like place and linking. And I'll say some things about what we mean by that in this context. Second, place records, that is how we have chosen to represent historical places. And thirdly, place names, that is the semantics of place names. Have semantics. So let me get started. First, for those of you who aren't aware of the project, I'll say some brief things about it to describe it, to define it, you might say. So this is a web platform. The project began in 2017. Version 1 was launched in 2019. It's now at a version 2.1. It's a fully functional website with several hundred registered users and lots of data in the 2+ million places, 5+ million names. Version 3 is currently in very active development. There'll be a beta release of this in June, which I'm working very hard with my fellow developer, Stephen Gadd, on that. So some definitions, the WHG, which is how I term it for short, a global linked open data historical gazetteer. And a more wordy thing to say would be that it's a collaborative open platform about historical place and providing content and services for that. And our tagline is linking knowledge about the past to be a place, which is about the most terse or succinct, not quite mission statement, but a statement of purpose for the platform. Some background, the project is based at the University of Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania in the United States. The director of the project is Ruth Muller, historian, a good friend and colleague for many, many years. I'm the technical director, and you can see that there's a small team that's associated with bringing this forward. Small, I should say. The project is funded initially by a 3-year grant of some significant size by the U.S. National Endowment for the Humanities. A year ago or so, we got a second comparable size grant. So the initial proof of concept was apparently proved sufficient for us to bring it forward. We've also had the involvement of a number of organizations, including the Conway Humanities Cluster and the Royal Dutch Academies have been good, close partners of ours almost all along. Several international study centers at Pitt have been involved and engaged us to develop out certain features that they had particular interest in. Win this Best DH Tool Award in 2021. We were quite proud of that, but that's now in the distance, I guess. And we're members of the Pelagios Network and have been since its inception and quite active in it. So the platform is really quite involved. There's a lot to say about it, and there really isn't the time to go over it. I encourage you to check it out at whgazetteer.org. There's a fair bit of explanatory information on the site that you can explore, and you can just poke around and register, and you would be able to do more. But I have a few screens that I'll walk through that describe kind of the basics of what's going on. In these terms, there's data, where the data is coming from, how it gets in and managed, and in what ways it gets out, because that's kind of the purpose of gathering data and then making it accessible in ways that it wasn't before. So on the left, you see people who are studying the past from all manner of disciplines and fields of study, including museums, libraries, and archives, not only academics. And they are, in the course of their research, they're developing data. And among their data, references to place. So it's indicated by the green in this figure. They have questions about their data, the geographical questions, among many others. The geographical questions are regarding location, distribution, diffusion, these sorts of geographic dimensions, you might say. What we look for is for contributors to export their place data, specifically, particularly, in a format that we can ingest. And we've created a linked places format because we can't parse the formats. It is simply impossible. And people keep their data however they do and however is meaningful for them and useful for them. And we have no opinion on it. What's the best way to do that? People will do what they do, but we need a standard import format. So people upload a data file in one of those formats. They give it metadata. They're then in a private space.
Excuse me, Karl, did you want the slides?
Yeah.
Because I'm just seeing the web page for the World Historical Gazetteer. I think everybody just sees that, not the presentation. Excuse me.
You're seeing this?
I'm just seeing the World Historical Gazetteer, localhost 8001 page.
Well, that's not good. You're not seeing my slide presentation.
Exactly.
That's not good at all. So
also, but Jano sees the.
Let me.
Yeah.
Stop share, and then I'm going to share again, and we'll do this correctly.
Yeah.
Very sorry about that. I thought we had sorted that out.
Yeah, I think it just might have gotten stuck I think you might have had to move the PowerPoint slide window up to the front. So now, yeah, now we got PowerPoint in the front.
Are you seeing PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. Well, look at what you missed. An outline, a screenshot of version 2, a screenshot of the version 3 in progress, and some of the definitional statements that I was reciting, largely reciting, a summary of who all's on the team and some of our partners that I've mentioned, and now a figure which it really is helpful if you actually see.
There we go. Yep.
Are you seeing the figure?
Yeah, now it's in the presentation mode. Perfect. Thank you. We're back on track.
Very sorry about that. Well, when I said the place data is in green, well, now you know what I'm talking about, right? So people hold their data in all sorts of forms, and form you hold it in, whatever is for you, that's fine. But in order for us to ingest data from a variety of sources, it would have to be in one of in the standard format linked places in one of the two forms that we have, an elaborate and expressive JSON form, and then there's a simplified delimited format that many people find adequate. And you'll see some of the imagery that I was referring to earlier. Now you can see what I was talking about, hopefully. And now we're right now we're looking at data from where it's from. If people upload a file, they create metadata for it. They're in a private space where they can view what they've uploaded and manage it in several ways, including submit it for reconciliation to an index of 3.5 million or so Wikidata records, that place records that we maintain in order to geocode places they don't have a geometry for, and to acquire authority IDs from various sources and to move the contribution forward. They couldn't simply get those geometries and download it and go on their way. That's fine also, but it's also encouraged to make contributions. And data out. Well, so as I mentioned, there are millions of places and many more millions of place names, and there are many ways that that data is made accessible, including an API, which isn't indicated here. So there's searching and browsing. There's features that are dedicated to teaching use cases. And there's three kinds of publications. So once you've uploaded a data set, it's in shape to be published. There are pathways to publish individual data set collections, which is sets of data sets, and thematic place collections, which are collections of place records that are annotated. It's much more of an authorial kind of publication. Racing forward, I said that our tagline is linking knowledge about the past via place, about the most terse way to say what we're up to. So what do we mean by place? We had to have an understanding of that ourselves. Place is something that it's been the focus of my research since I've had research. And so I've given a lot to it and wandered down various ontological cul-de-sacs regarding it. If you look out in the world for what people mean by place, you can see the OED, which is now paywalled, so I can't actually look at those 39 meanings without subscribing to the thing. There are 39 meanings, which say the CDOC CRM, which is an ontology, a conceptual reference model that many of you may know of, has a place entity. And this is a quote from it, that a place is extents in space, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, independent from temporal phenomena and matter. And Webster's dictionary also considers place to be roughly synonymous with space, a portion of space. Yifu Tuan was a humanistic geographer who wrote about place extensively, and paraphrasing him, he referred to it as a location given meaning by humans. And I'm comfortable with that. The others, not so much. One project that has been, in a way, motivational and is the Pleiades Gazetteer of the Ancient World. I've been aware of since its inception. And they are a historical gazetteer of the classical Mediterranean ancient world, largely, essentially. And they have a definition of place, which I was interested to see. Places are concepts. I'm okay with that. But then they say they have no spatial or temporal attributes of their own, and I'm not so sure about that. So in hunting around for formal definitions of space, or any definition, of place, that I could be comfortable with, it's been problematic. No or temporal attributes of their own. So there are a multitude of meanings, and they get poetic, and I like the poetic ones. That's just fine, but what do you do with that when you're building a formal system? I like these statements. Locales are settings for things and events, and that very much rhymes with my own event-centered perspective on representing historical knowledge. Places do hold a multitude of meanings for people who know of them. I would say, and have said, that places are broadly the sum of what has occurred there, and maybe also the sum of what can occur there, giving a nod to Christoph Janowitz and affordances. And I would also, I also like very much a phrase by Doreen Massey, a humanistic geographer, who said that place is a meeting up of histories. But again, what is the way to formalize this? Well, my dissertation advisor, Mike Goodchild, wrote a paper formalizing place in geographic information systems. And he, you know, had lots these things, which are kind of indicate the issue or the landscape, you might say. The definition of place has remained elusive. The vagueness of place and the interface between the informal world of human discourse. Nowhere as apparent as with the Gazetteer. Like many terms, place performs a variety of functions in different settings. So this leaves me where I'm often led to in the world of ontology development and formal vocabulary development and so forth, which is that it fell to me to represent the set of concepts and relations that were going to be important and required for this platform that I was going to build in collaboration with some people. So getting practical, and it's kind of a going down to see what it is we're interested in. What are those entities and relations, and what is it that we have to accomplish? This is an information system. What does it have to accomplish? And if there's to be an ontology, it's going to come sort of after the fact. So we say these are, I guess, would be the axioms for what came to be linked places model. There are places, whatever those are, whatever a place is, there are place records that are information objects. They are attestations describing a geographic feature. A place need not have a known location. The places are dynamic. This is critical. Not only do places come into being and go out of being, but many of their attributes change over time. In fact, quite often they do. Names, the place type from a village to a city, the extents of places and their relations to other places change over time. They're entirely dynamic. And in this system, multivocality was to be essential. That is, there isn't one, we're not aimed at building an authority record for each individual place. What the platform aims to do is to gather multiple attestations for places and link them together. Knowledge, that's a kind of a grand thing to say. Well, if researchers and others who are in these various field disciplines and fields of endeavor are doing work that's related to Tbilisi, and they maintain a list of the places, of all of the places that they're concerned with, and they look up Tbilisi and they find and they need a geometry because they need to map their research. And they find a record in GeoNames that corresponds to the Tbilisi they know of. And let's just look at the upper right, and they decide that GeoNames 4680 is the Tbilisi record. That'll give them a geometry, and they've made that link. If each of these who are dealing with some aspect of Tbilisi do a similar thing, finding an authority identifier that corresponds to their notion of Tbilisi and make that assertion, my Tbilisi is this Tbilisi, and so on and so forth, then it's possible to, if they contribute their data, and then it's possible to aggregate all of the attestations for Tbilisi coming from all of these disciplines under a single record, not to merge them, but to link them. And so taking it out of the theoretical this is kind of grand. This is where, everything that's known about Tbilisi is ultimately linkable. That's a moonshot sort of thing to say. But a lot of basic information or basic attestations about Tbilisi is very much linkable and is linked. And in our system, if you search for Tbilisi by any of the name variants from any of these 5 attestations that we've gathered for it so far, you will come to this page, which brings together what we have heard so far about Tbilisi from these 5 sources. Actually, there are more, but I can't scroll on the screen. And there's a temporal histogram that indicates that the temporal density, you might say, of the attestations we have so far. This would change over time as new attestations are added. Well, how do these decisions, these linking decisions, get made? Well, when you accession your data set to World Historical Gazetteer, after you have looked for geometry and Wikidata and so forth, then you're reconciling to our union index. And this is a screen where you review the results of the reconciliation, record by record. So in this case, this record got 1 hit, our union index. This is a record that has 2 linked records already in the index. And our search indicates that this is a potential match for your record over here, which I'm not going to try to pronounce that. And this is very clearly, this is a match. And what happens is that you click close match and go on to the next one and so on and so forth. And when you do that, then this record then becomes part of this set. So now a search for any of the name variants for Saskatoon would return a set of 3 and not 2. I apologies for not showing that earlier. Let's close up. So what is the basis for this match? Well, when people are faced with this task of making match decisions between their record and other records that are coming from other data sets or from Wikidata, the very basic question is, on what basis do I make that match? Am I looking for a match that is the same place? Is that Saskatoon the same as this one? Is that Istanbul the same as this Byzantium? And we don't use same as at all. What we say, although it isn't really enforced logically within the system, is that the relation that you're asserting, if you say it's a match, is the Scots close match relation. And Scots close match is a very vague concept or scope note that's as formal as it gets, and which suits historical research just fine, I think, but with some results, as you'll see, and some issues that arise, as you'll see going forward. A Scots close match indicates that 2 concepts are sufficiently similar they can be used interchangeably in some information retrieval applications. Okay. And a concept can be viewed as an idea or notion, a unit of thought. This is meant to be suggestive rather than restrictive. Again, this suits historiography pretty well, or more than others. For example, exact match or same as. So people ask, well, they see this and they say, well, that doesn't help very much. What should I do? How would I do this? And what I say is that the purpose of the assertion is to ensure that records that should appear together do, in your estimation. And that's the best that we can do. And this can really be considered a not positive artifact of linked data systems. It depends how you look at it. Or two records are a match. If you would want both to be returned in a search for any of their name variants, well, that's fine, except that people will interpret that in various ways. And I don't know that we have a poll enabled in this Zoom or that we really want to go through this, but this is a back when Twitter was Twitter, a poll that I put out there out of curiosity: are Istanbul, Constantinople, and Byzantium the same place? And you can see the result. That there is no general agreement on matters like this. And this extends in very many ways. So when you look at this, the membership of these 5 attestations in this set is the product of matching decisions made by 5 different individuals who may have had different understandings about what is a close match, or what is the same as, or what records they want to appear. And it's very much contestable in many examples. For example, is a city a close match to an archaeological site, which is its former presence, that sort of thing? Is a city a close match to an administrative municipality that it lies within? We conducted, I'll just say briefly, we conducted a formal survey, actually, an experiment a few years ago, where we presented a set of the same records to a group of people who made these matching decisions, and we recorded them to see if there was any correspondence. And there was some, but there was a lot of disagreement as to what was a close match. The semantics of place records. So we're very much in a pragmatic vein. We're building this system and we're bringing together place data about places that's submitted. I jokingly have called my mission in life to make trouble for cartographers, because I develop data models that do things that might be hard to represent in maps, or that afford representations that might be hard to represent in maps. So I'm going to say something about linked places format. I'm going to ask Francis for a time check.
Sorry, I just had to find the right button to press. You're okay? Do you think you could go about 10 minutes longer?
Okay.
I don't know where you are in the presentation exactly. You know, we had that moment where we had to go back and we started a couple minutes late. So I think looking that we want to end by about the full hour, so 6 o'clock here or 16 GMT, then we could just go 10 minutes longer.
Time check with respect to 30 minutes.
Yeah. It's I'm the 30 minutes for me is you've got 10 minutes longer.
Okay, good. So something about linked places format. Again, I'm racing forward and I'm happy to answer questions. And there are links in this talk which will be available to you, and you can explore stuff on your own. And can certainly quiz me about this stuff as soon as I'm done with these slides. Linked places format intends to meet those requirements that I listed before, that for a historiographic platform for storing data about places. And it made sense to start with GeoJSON. It was a very common format for representing geographic features. And to furthermore start with GeoJSON-LD, that is the LD representation, or the RDF-ish version of GeoJSON-LD, and then to add some foreign elements to it, what they call foreign elements, foreign members, I think they call it. So linked places format remains valid GeoJSON. You take a linked places format file and load it into applications that support GeoJSON just fine. But there's extra things. So what's extra is that a when object has been added that can be applied to an entire record or to any set of names, sessions, or locations over time. It also adds the ability to specify a level of certainty for some of the elements and also citations for many of them. And I say here an underlying ontology is in development because it remains to be seen just how essential it is. There's no goal of doing formal reasoning against this data store. And in fact, it's not in a triple store. This is the linked places model. You can see that there's a place record in this ontology that's yet to be, well, there's a draft of it, but it's yet to be published and completed. There's a place record that describes a place, which we can say is a SCOS concept. And it describes the aspects of place, and these are the ones that are this orangish color can be temporally scoped. They can have when elements, as I'll show you in a minute. Names, types, relations, and locations can all vary over time, and a single record can encapsulate those dynamics. And that's kind of the purpose of linked places format. A little bit more of what that looks like in practice. You see on the left is kind of a pseudocode-ish level of a GeoJSON record. You can see that when has been applied to an entire record and also to a name, a type, and one of several geometries. And on the right, you can see an example from some record that's in the system where there's an entity, there's a record for Egypt during a certain period, and there are two extents associated with that vary over time. And that kind of dynamics is expressible in linked places format. And I should add that not very many of the contributors to World Historical Gazetteer have detail like that, but if they do, it can be handled. The last section of the three concerns place names, which interests me a lot, and it gets us into the humanistic angle, I think. The question of, do proper nouns have semantics? You know, there's one school of thought. There are different schools of thought. So one school of thought is that they don't, that a place name, like any proper noun, is simply refers to something. It's a pointer to some real world entity or concept. There's another view which makes more sense to me because I take Yi-Fu Tuan at his word, and also from my experience that that places have meaning. They have variety of meanings, and there is a formal way to think about this, and it's in semiotic theory. And that is that there's a sign or signifier. It goes by different terms depending on the theoretician. Hagia Sophia. And there's a real world object that is Hagia Sophia. I'm in Istanbul, by the way, so it's on my mind. The sign Hagia Sophia, whatever, it has a meaning in the interpretant of that. Whoever sees that, there's an associated meaning and an infinite number of associated meanings. If there's an infinite number of people who know of, or for whom Hagia Sophia is meaningful. So to me, place names do have meaning, but we don't necessarily record those meanings and can't record the infinite number of meanings held in minds about what Hagia Sophia means. There's another one, Mumbai. there is a city, Mumbai, and it's a real world thing. It is what it is. We all know it. But that the term Mumbai can have all sorts of meanings to people who've experienced it in some way or know of it in some way. Maybe they were married there. I would say that place names do have meanings. WHG links multiple attestations of closely matched places. And these do reflect different perspectives on the same place. It's hard to say whether it's the attributes that we record reflect meaning. Do they correspond to that term? But they, as I said, they do not reflect the vast possibilities of meanings associated with place names. However, the World Historical Gazetteer does have a feature called place collections, where it's possible to associate places with each other and annotate the records in that collection, expressing the meaning, but not in formal terms, in notes, in a temporal statement, in a relation keyword of your choice, in a handful of ways. It is possible in the system to express the meaning of a place, but not in our place record. This, by the way, is going to look relatively gorgeous in version 3, not like this.
Hey, Karl, sorry again. Could you wrap up in about 2-3 minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's perfect timing because this is just about the end of it. So here's an example of an annotation on the place. It goes by the name Bonny, is in Nigeria or on the Niger Delta. It's hard to say what the country was at the time. It was 1753. Not really sure. That actually was the last slide. But since I have another 90 seconds, I'm going to go to the supplemental slide to indicate that some of the other things that are made possible in this system. So I have this mission that I call filling in the map. So, and the map being sort of the global repository of places in the world. We have some research assistants who are students. One of them has discovered a trove of place information at the United Nations office, where they have recorded all of the villages in all of the countries that United Nations humanitarian related organizations do business. And it's an incredible set of data sets. And he is one by one bringing them in. And he's begun with countries in Central Africa. This shows 8. He's actually got 13 going. And on the bottom, you see some statistics that I was curious, I came up with just today. In this collection of 8 data sets, well, 13 now, there were 150,000 place records. And now I can't even see my statistics in it because it's being masked. But you can see that the vast majority of the places in those were not to be found in Wikidata or in our big WHG index. And they became new seed records in our index. To me, this constitutes filling in the map in a very interesting and compelling way. The density of settlements in the Sudan, for example, was completely siloed in this data store held by this United Nations humanitarian organization. And we are accessioning this data and exposing it. And I think that's in addition to the knowledge commons. And another one real quick here is this growing data set collection of indigenous place names in North America. There are 6 data sets, I think, so far that are bringing together attestations of indigenous place names and the corresponding names. And this is also, I think, a commendable thing that we're doing, if I may say.
Yes.
And I think it's pretty close to time.
Yes, thank you very, very much. It was really a fascinating presentation. I think there's been a couple of notes, and everybody I think wants would certainly join me in just thanking you right away for the really interesting and insightful presentation. Does anyone right away have a question that anyone wants to ask? I see, yeah, there's a question here already in the chat. Let me just read it out loud in case somebody doesn't have the chat open. From Chris Loth, how would you conceptualize the inclusion of place names in signed languages?
In sign language, and by that you mean sign language?
I'm assuming, yeah, like with
Gestural
hands. Yeah, yeah.
languages?
Yes, I believe that's what.
Uh,
If you can clarify that, if you're able to, that would be great, Chrismy.
Yes, of course. So the general term for sign languages is signed languages. So I mean, whatever version of sign language is prevalent in your area or
right.
the area that you're covering with this project.
Yeah, I just needed to clarify that because I had never considered it or thought of it. And as somebody who has significant hearing problems, that's ironic. I think our first step is going to be to try to do an I-18N internationalization of language on the site. Just regarding language generally. Very, very many of the place names that we have in the system have associated language and or language script codes that are not exposed particularly in the system. And they are not, the coverage isn't complete enough for many kinds of meaningful searches against language, if you follow that. However, it is a goal in version 3, not necessarily the beta in June, but it is very much a goal to expose language better. Sign languages, this goes into the version 4 thinking place.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is from Bob Corret or Corre. He in the chat he posted a message referring to the Gouda time machine in the Netherlands that gathers attestations of plots, buildings, streets, neighborhoods, bridges, etc. I'm just repeating what's there if you've read it already. If not, if you have, I apologize. This includes geometries and time periods, 1300 to the present. Would you consider these as places? And more important, are these more fine-grained places from time machine initiatives of interest to WHG.org?
Right. Well, that's a great question. It's one that we've thought of a lot. So going back several years, many people have approached us with ideas or to tell us of projects that have places at an urban scale features, and do we handle urban scale features? And we have an interest in doing that, but by and large, the focus is on settlements and administrative areas and physical geographic features. Mm-hmm. That's the great majority of the contributed data so far. However, among the place types that we recognize and parse and do something with are many urban scale feature types. So we borrow 170 terms from the Getty AAT vocabulary for place types, and that includes buildings and monuments and building ensembles and a number of urban scale type features, but we receive relatively very little data like that. Mm-hmm. And to do it justice, really, I think would require some adjustments or extensions to the way we display places that are of significant development things. So I'm afraid that's in the version 4 pot also. Further development of it is that is.
Yeah, thanks. There was a follow-up question from Bob Corre to that too, which is more about the programming side, where he asks, is the whgazetteer.org only available as a website and as REST API, or maybe also as a Sparkle endpoint and or reconciliation API?
So there is an API, and if you go to the site, you'll see that there's a link on the top menu that offers several endpoints that will return JSON responses to a variety of queries. The question of API is very much an active, and the extension of our API capability is part of version 3, very much in active development right now. We're working with several partners or institutions to expand what we can do and make actually two-way post and get interaction with data in WHG. So look for more about that with the release of the beta in June. There'll be a different way of exposing those endpoints. And also there's always an open invitation for people who want to interact with this data to let me know what endpoints would be useful that we haven't created so far. Once the gearworks are in place to do it, adding another endpoint is not a difficult thing at all.
Great, thank you. Another question just came in from
oh, and Sparkle, no, right now everything is geared toward returning JSON, GeoJSON, linked places format. But in this expansion of the API capability, we will be providing at least CSV also. Sparkle is another can of worms, and that might be in the V4 pot. Sorry.
No problem. I was just going to move on to the next question, which was from Krzysztof Janowicz about, could you talk a bit more about the idea of attestations and how to use the Gazetteer for queries across them, and also on your plans to add more data sources? Will there be pre-integrated linked versions of the Gazetteer that conflate these places?
Well, we don't conflate places, place records. That is, a contributed place record is authored by somebody, developed for their purpose. Bring it into the system, and there's the means that I showed the basics of for linking that attestation, that place record, with others for closely matched places. But there isn't a conflation per se, but very much working towards, I'm not sure we have time to go into it, very much working towards displays of linked records as a unit. But we can't disturb the authorship of any individual attestation. So that was one part of the question. I think there were more. Can you refresh my?
Maybe Krzysztof raised his hand, so maybe he already wants to respond to that. Jano, are you there?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, maybe it's easier if you just say it instead of writing it. You know, fantastic Karl talk. I could listen to this all day. My question is like this. I know that the attestation are separate for good reasons. This is what I like about your work, and also the use of close match. But do you think it would be possible for you or others in the future to come up with, let's say, distributions or bundles of the Gazetteer where those things that are highly likely to refer to the same place, whatever this means, are already conflated so that people don't have to do the work over and over again? Because what you're doing is fantastic as an open-ended data warehouse in a most neutral way. But the work is on the individual user then to do the work over and over again. So maybe there's middle ground. What do you think?
Well, so we record the matching decisions that create sets of attestations in an Elasticsearch index. And each one of these sets has a nominal parent that has a unique identifier. And that identifier is it's unique and it's permanent, and it represents the set. That is, the seed and all of the subsequently matched records are joined in that way. We present that set in a variety of ways, and we're extending the ways we present that. But the idea of conflating it to a single record, I think, has to fall to the user of the data and maybe, I know people want a simple answer. They want a curated single individual record for Istanbul they can use. But the use cases vary wildly. And if you ask us, you can do it now for Istanbul, and you get back a set of 8 attestations for Istanbul, Byzantium, Constantinople, whatever's been linked in that set. I don't know what other steps of processing we can do to make that useful, generally useful. Useful for whom? I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer, but that's what I've got.
I think it's an interesting point, if I could chime in on here, because the as you phrase it, is what is useful. And I think that's going to depend, as you said, on the use cases, but it's also going to depend on the systems and the concepts and the period. So there's so many variables that one needs to consider when one answers the question, show me the place where Istanbul is, that, for example, that I believe, while it might be possible that a certain type of application framework could do that, it would need to be scoped to that particular application. And then you would address the use case.
Somebody would need, I mean, if you're asking, can there be a conflation? Well, if you perform a conflation based on ideas or theories or purposes that you have, you are you're not necessarily doing
No, the connection
just
is breaking, unfortunately. Yeah, me neither.
If the authorship of a constituent record,
okay. We just lost you, Karl, unfortunately, so I don't know if you can reiterate what you just said, but I was going to basically also around this time, we've gone the full hour, so I was pretty close to calling an end to the formal part of the presentation. If Karl's willing, we can stay on a little bit longer for the discussion. But I want to make sure everybody knows that now we've gone the full hour. So please feel free to go if that's your prerogative.
Can you still not hear me?
We hear you now very well, actually. Yeah. It was just right then when you were trying to explain those concepts that it, unfortunately, exactly then broke down. And now I don't know if you just heard me, but I was just saying that we've gone the full hour. So I think a number of people have other events to attend and things to do. So basically we can stay on for those people who want to, but Karl, that's really depends on your ability and desire to keep talking.
Well, I could talk about World Historical Gazetteer essentially forever.
Good.
and I have
I'm
been
not going to last that long.
for 7 years. So, I mean, to the extent that you can hear me, I'm happy to stay on if anyone has any more questions. And Thomas, it's nice to see you, and Zilong, and all of you who I know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it
Thank
was a,
you for
a
speaking
a
about
great
it.
talk. I think the point that you were making, I think Jano might have heard it in terms of the conflation problematic, but you were saying a little bit more than I think those two words. And I don't know if you want,
Yeah,
if we could just come back to that and maybe with that discussion there, because I think it could be relevant to those of us who are still here, we could
sure.
touch on that still.
Yano seemed to be voicing a use case where people in a request for information about a given place get back a single record, and World Historical Gazetteer returns at best a set of records that have been attested to be close matches with each other. And that's the nature of this linked data system. And I think so if there's to be some conflation, especially if the data, if a record for a place is coming from a historical scholar, it matters to them what company their record keeps, right? And if you build let's say they have 6 name variants, and you build a conflated record for a place, and you include 3 of their name variants, but not 3 others, then you've done damage to their data. And you've done damage to what we promise in a way. But people are free to retrieve a set of places or a list of many sets of places and do whatever they like to manipulate it. And there are lots of possibilities, and they are all dependent on use cases, as you said, Francis.
Yes. Yeah, there's lots of use cases. I was really motivated by what you had said regarding the use cases. I also think there was you didn't say this exactly, but I took you, and this is really relevant to this idea of conflation, that the meanings of place exceed the semantics of location. And I think that gets to be a considerable challenge because not everyone starts to work with gazetteers or even with maps with that understanding that the map is just a partial representation of the world. The gazetteer is only a collection of names for locations. It's partial. They're all partial.
At times I have to retreat to a kind of a very basic mission or goal. The founding principle of this was that of this platform was that the world needs a place to put information about historical places that people discover. It needs a central location for it to go. So that much of the work that's involved in developing those records and locating them and so forth need not be repeated by others, right? There should be a system like this. And World Historical Gazetteer is very ambitious, has the idea that it can be that system. And I think we've demonstrated that there can be a system like that. And there are lots of and the linked places model is quite expressive, so it could still be adjusted. But so to me, there's a setup for such a repository, and there are many things that can happen in version 4 and 5, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And I think the repository is an important concept. I think there's sort of archival functionality that your WHG provides.
Sure. I mean, there are many kinds of applications that can make use of this data, and we've developed applications in our interface that directed towards some teaching use cases. We're very focused on that because we've had partners who've been interested to do that. But there are a number of others, genealogy, all sorts of things that could happen using that data in a two-way fashion. That's not two-way, in a two-way fashion.
Yeah, no, I think that's a brilliant strength of what you're developing. It means, though, that some people will say, as Jano's question was asking, is there a way to basically get an extract that is a conflation of the information? So it basically helps a person answer the question, where is Constantinople or where is Istanbul? And they would,
I'm afraid we would give you
yeah, I
eight
know. I know
weeks.
that's the reality, and
Yeah.
that's the historians are happy with that. Tomasz, I don't know if you would agree with that, but I
I
think
don't know
certain
that they
people are
are.
not.
No, well, we can make a representative point, but that point would be meaningless, a centroid of
Sure.
all of them, or a weighted centroid because
Right, I
some
know,
of the
yeah, yeah.
outliers.
Yeah, I
Well,
know,
what
yeah.
are you going to do?
Right. Well, you could have it like a pull down menu, like choose the point well, how should we calculate the point? Wait, geographically weighted mean, do you want,
Right?
you
One
know,
could do that.
one could. And I suppose when you get to this API functionality, I imagine that some people might actually do that for an application.
Yeah, well, we invite it, and I mean, if somebody said, "Well, there's some analytical function that they have in mind to do," and if it were generic enough, if it were general enough that it would be useful not only to them but for some spectrum of users,
Yeah,
then it could be added to the development of the platform.
sure.
But it has to be generic.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I mean, and that is, and that's that ties in very well with the ambition. There's always just going to be a number of domains which are people will want to have more authoritative knowledge about what the place is rather than the historians, and you need to interpret this based on a number of factors that are very, very large and beyond the scope of what you might know now.
There's another factor here that we touched on it in Warsaw recently, which is that there's a divide, right? So it's frequently the case that the historical scholar, and Thomas will be well aware of this, that the historical scholar is pulling information from multiple sources.
Right.
They're creating a record for a place.
Right.
They are performing some conflation that requires disambiguation, et cetera, et cetera. They deliver to us a single record. So it's a kind of a fractal situation. They deliver to us that single thing, but we are not competent to perform an operation like that,
Sure.
an authored operation like that
Sure.
on data that comes to us
Sure.
from anywhere in the world, right?
Sure. I hear you. Yeah.
So I view it as, there being this line, and the historical contributor is on that side, and we're receiving it, and we need to receive one record per place. So you need to conflate your stuff, and then we're not going to conflate your stuff with other people's conflated stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
I think that's a point you're right. I
and
mean, that came out of that. I don't think there's ever going to be a clean solution for every case, for every person. So I think that we do need to remind people of this, that, when you're asking a system that's designed for historians, where is place X, that you're going to get multiple answers.
Well, historians I think, are quite accustomed to making sense out of, or making sufficient sense out of information pulled from various sources that may be vague,
right,
or maybe imprecise, and so on and so forth.
right.
So to imagine that once this information makes its way into a digital resource, that necessary aspect of historiography goes away, I don't think so.
No,
I
agree.
We can't do it for everybody. I don't, Thomas has his goals for his research. They're very much focused, and there are 1,000 other people who have other goals. To the extent we can learn what those are and find the Venn diagram center, of
Yeah.
what is generally useful to the most
Mhm.
people, work at that.
Right.
But otherwise, it's a question of bespoke applications.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Yeah, good point. So, okay, so that's what I think you might need to change the mission statement to include bespoke in it, so that people understand right away that it's not the answer to where a place is, it is specific to, it needs our definitions that we don't necessarily have when you ask a generic question.
Right. Well, our mission statement is a work in progress. That's just a tagline that I showed you. We
Yeah,
actually have
exactly.
a mission
Yeah.
statement. We just created a new one on a whiteboard a few weeks ago. So,
Oh, okay. Well, maybe it'll be with version 3 or with version 4.
it'll be visible in version 3. Yes,
Okay,
our new
great.
mission statement. It's
Okay.
just trying to be clarifying why we're doing this.
Yeah. Well, do let us know when you publish version 3 and it becomes available. I would be happy to pass that information on to ICA, because I think you saw there were a number of people here that are coming from other groups in the ICA, but I think generically there'll be an interest. So please let me know, and I can definitely make sure that gets a broader circulation in the ICA.
Well, the target is the 1st of June, and we'll see.
Like it.
It's
Yeah,
pretty much a target, so something will be released on the 1st of June.
That's wonderful. That's really good.
Nearly certain.
Yeah. Good. Good.
Are
Okay.
you planning any like a meeting during the launch of the third version, so that people could familiarize, learn the differences, and so on and so forth?
Well, the answer is we haven't planned that, but the other answer is that we should plan that.
I saw in your eyes that it was a tough question. Sorry.
He's probably
Well,
just getting tired at this point.
It's tough because as of the 1st of June, my role goes to 1 day a week. I'm on the verge of retiring, or I'm phasing out. I'm much older than I look. And there's somebody, the gifted developer, Stephen Gadd, will be essentially the lead developer.
Yeah.
But there isn't a plan for events surrounding the 1st of June. I think, but there could be. My day a week can be used to arrange things like that would happen actually the 2nd week of June. So thank you, Thomas, for reminding me.
Yeah. Do a webinar. That would be great.
We'll do that.
Great. Thanks, Tomasz. Okay. I think I'm going to wrap things up there with another big round of thanks, Karl, for the wonderful talk. It was really, really insightful as always. And every time there's just really good questions that come up with this topic. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you for the invite. Tomas, nice to see you.
Okay.
See you again soon.
Yeah. Take care. Thanks again.
Bye-bye. Thanks for the talk. Bye, Francis. Bye, Eric.
Bye, Tomasz. Bye, Eric. Bye, everyone. Eduardo.